Pluto bonding. Now, I am going to go through the other planets and asteroids. I'm not just going to focus on Pluto, but I'm going through Pluto a bit deeper because, well, that's what Pluto's about. It's about going deeper. It's about digging into where other planets and asteroids aren't willing to go. Obviously, all the planets and asteroids have their things that they're really attached to, right? But digging deeper to get to the truth, that's Pluto. And so when it comes to having a honest, truthful relationship where you don't have skeletons in the closet, you don't have stones unturned. This is, I want something real with you. And yes, we may be hurt by what we find out about each other, but that isn't enough to scare me away because it's the truth. Now, that is specifically Pluto. I don't actually think any other planet works like that, and I don't think its influences on people in terms of individuals as charts, whatever. I don't think it works like that in any other. I just don't. I've not seen it. So when it comes to the desire for something true and real, you have to look at Pluto. Now, Scorpio is a split between Mars and Pluto, so it definitely has qualities of both. And that's why you can't really say Scorpio is exactly like Pluto, because it isn't. So it creates a different dynamic. And this dynamic, again, if you're a Scorpio or a person who has heavy Scorpio in their chart, you very may well, if you're high vibration, have more of the like Pluto, like the good Pluto qualities, and fear isn't as high up. Like, I don't personally think, again, when you think about the digging deep into things, right? Like, that's Pluto's specialty. Like, that's what it does. So you can't really have a lot of fear as your framework if you're going to do that. Like, not really. Where Mars, again, Mars can come across as a lot more brash, right? A lot, and I'm going to do Mars as well, so I'm not going to go too much into Mars because this is a tribute to Pluto. But Mars can definitely be more fear-oriented. Based on what I've seen, people who have really, really strong Mars influences, and specifically Aries, and then again, by extension, the more Mars qualities of Scorpio, right? So because Mars is very instinct-based, right? It's not very forethinking. And, it's kind of more reactive because of the immaturity that this planet brings. And again, by extension, Aries in particular is also this way. Again, you can get high vibration. It doesn't mean that because you've got Mars influences or Aries that you're going to be this, scared, whatever. But it is definitely more of a tendency than it is from Pluto. Because Pluto, like I said, you cannot be afraid if you're digging deep into the traumas of people, the wounds, their hidden desires that could be shameful. This is like breaking down of patriarchy, breaking down of religious concepts. Like, Pluto is interested in cracking and snapping and busting open the frailty, right? The fear, to uncover the truth. And when you're comfortable with the truth, even if it's painful, even if you don't like it, it's still, the bottom line is, well, I'll get over it. I still need the truth. I don't think you live in fear with that kind of stuff. Like, not really. Like, if you're going to war because you're Mars and you're charging into battle and whatever, that doesn't mean that you're not scared. You would be. Because it's a direct fight, I guess, which could end your life. So Mars helps you do it anyway, right? But it doesn't mean that there's no fear. Where with Pluto, like I said, when it can be ticklish business. Like, when you're getting down to the bottom of things and you're finding the truth in other people and in yourself. Like I said, you might be hurt by what you find out. You may not like it, right? But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that you're afraid. It's just part of the process. It's part of uncovering the truth. The truth can be hard to swallow. It can be painful. So there's a period of time where you have to sort through the pain of those feelings. And again, it depends on what kind of person you are. If you're a person who has a lot of aspects to Pluto, you're going to feel hurt. Don't think that it doesn't, because you will. Because it's a very sensitive planet. It brings very sensitive emotions. So you're going to feel it. But the thing is, you're not going to shy away from it. Again, it will depend what sign it's in, and there's a few different complexities. But when we're talking about the isolation of Pluto, you will get over it. And again, it's a lot of times it's testing. It's testing to see the resolve of another person. Like, are you able, as the other person, are you able to connect to me on this real deep level? Because if not, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, I don't want to do this with you. You're not the kind of person that I would interact with, because, you know, you repress your fears, or you repress your desires, or you have shame around it. You're not willing to face it. And then you're reactive and defensive and all the rest of it. All this stuff is just armor. Armor where you're creating a separation between you and the other person. Pluto's like, I'm not interested in that. You either open up and we discuss things in a real way. And you know what? If I'm not happy about what you're telling me, then I need to be able to discuss that. And you need to be able to sit in the moment of that. And vice versa. You might find out things about me that you don't like, that you're not comfortable with, and you have to sit in it as well. Because that's the truth. You can't have a real relationship. You can't have a real connection without that. Because if you cannot sit in the discomfort of the truth, and you can't handle that, and it creates a separation rather than bringing you closer, how can you have a real relationship? You can't. You cannot do it. And so that's why I think it's important for these types of things to be recognized. And now I know in astrology we talk about dominant placements, right? So if your planet or asteroid is in the sign that it rules, that's known as being a dominant placement. I want to go further, though. I don't dispute that creates an influence, and it definitely does. What I want to talk about is, do you have particular planets that aspect a lot of your chart? If that's the case, it means that planet or that asteroid creates a pretty decent influence in who you are, especially in the areas that it influences. So that has to be considered. And it has to be considered in each area of the chart. What areas are influenced by what? You know, what areas in your chart are influenced by this asteroid or this planet? Because you have to take that into account on an individual level. Now, when it comes to Pluto, like I said, a big part of this is that understanding that you can't have something real that's truly bonded, that connects you and the other person on a deep, deep level, if you can't talk about the skeletons in the closet, the pink elephant in the room. Like, if you can't have those kinds of conversations, a person who has strong Pluto influence in their chart, strong aspects to this planet, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's fake. And look, this is the part that's interesting. If you're not willing to face those things, there's a whole bunch of other planets and asteroids that don't mind that. And it's okay. And you can both bond over the fact that you're not being real. And that's where I think a lot of relationships sit, if I'm being honest. But people who have strong Pluto, they can't do that. You can't do that because it's like, well, I'm not dating you. I'm dating your repressed issues. I'm dating all the things that you won't face. I'm dating your defensive, what's it called? Your defensive walls. I'm dating your traumas. And that's why I think Pluto is so important when it comes to the longevity and the connectivity, the compatibility in a relationship. Because if you actually want something real that endures, that you both, no matter what, are bonded, and again, it depends. Not everybody wants that kind of thing, right? Like I don't even think Scorpio, as a sign, wants it that deep. Now, if you have, if you're in the generation of Pluto ruled, Pluto people in Scorpio, then you probably will. You probably will want that. But by and large, because of the Mars influence of Scorpio, it changes the dynamic a little bit. It isn't as much like, yes, there's transformational cycles. Yes, there's, the need to understand the other person and, have that deeper connection. And it's definitely deeper than other signs, for sure. I think all the signs have their areas where they like to connect, and they're deep in that area, right? I don't know. Personally, I just think emotions are the most important when it comes to bonding. Yes, you need to apply logic, and when it comes to the, working of a relationship, sorting out problems, whatever, all these things are important, and I don't dispute that. But when it comes to the connection, when it comes to the attraction between people, when it comes to the desires and the feelings and all, you need to understand the importance of emotions. And that's why I say when it comes to like moon placements and aspects in terms of Pluto and whatever, these kinds of things are going to become even more important. And this is what's interesting. Like I said, there's different levels of people. There are people who are deeper, people who are not as deep, and everything in between. And I'm talking about emotionally at this point. But I don't know, that's just my personal view, is that the deeper you are emotionally, the better you regulate your emotions, not just that you feel them, but that you understand how to regulate them and you understand how to explain them, how to talk them through, how to feel them and to sit with them. Yeah, you're going to have a pretty decent influence of Pluto here. So I talked about that, like the conjunction between the moon and Pluto in particular. It creates that need for emotional truth and authenticity, the reality of emotions, the ability to feel them. And even though you feel pain, you still sit with it. You still work through it. And I think that's the real test of it, is if you're in a relationship and you don't have the ability to regulate your own emotions or handle the other person's emotions, how can you make a relationship work? It's just going to be built on lies, isn't it? Lies, deception, repression. You're hiding things from each other. You can't be honest. It cannot be done. Not really. You're just mutually deciding not to have anything truthful or real. And it can be a lone existence when it comes to Pluto heavy people, because you can only be around people who have heavy Pluto influences. That's the truth. And, they're drawn to each other too. Drawn to each other. You have to have that influence, or it's just like. So every single one of these planets create a different influence in terms of what sign it's in, what house it's in, and the aspects to other planets and asteroids. So obviously there's no way I can go through all of these things. I'm going to go through a generalized where I can, and so that should be fun, I think anyway. But I thought I'd start with Pluto because it's, in terms of the truth, the reality, digging deep, facing wounds and traumas, and actually having real bonds that last the test of time, you have to look at Pluto. There is no other planet that works like this in terms of all of that. So I just thought I would talk about it because I think it's a big one. It's a big one. And they all have their little facets of how that's important. And then again, it shows based on compatibility which people you connect with more when you have these similar aspects to the same or similar planets, or, you know, whatever it might look like. But anyway, I'll go ahead and leave it there, and I'll come back for another video another time.